Hello, folks. I am going to now record your review for course performance or class performance up through Module 2. And so what you can see in front of you are the descriptive statistics covering your work through Module 2. And you can see here, we are looking at a total of 129 standardized points for in-text work. Now, let me give you a little bit of clarification perhaps or framing for this. So in the first module, when I took the data from your e-text and transferred it into my spreadsheet, there were some errors and I wasn't quite sure what was going on. A couple students reached out to me, and they're minor, but a couple students reached out and let me know that that was happening. And I clarified their grades for them. But just so everybody knows, I have figured out what the issue was. And so when you're looking at your grades in Blackboard, particularly those associated with your in-text assignments, as I explained last time, obviously your in-text assignments have a different set of points. The raw points are, there are many more raw points than there are standardized points. So for this class, 1/4 of your grade, or 25%, or 250 points, are from your in-text work, but you're going to get a lot more than 250 points. So for each module, I have determined what portion or what ratio of the raw points are from the chapters we're covering. And then I multiply that ratio times the total points, 250 points, to get your standardized points. So you could have gotten up to a total of 65 points in chapters 1 through 4 standardized. And in chapters 5 through 8, you could get up to 64. So that's a total of 129. When you look at your grades in Blackboard, what you'll see is that Module 2 in-text assignments have to include both Module 1 and Module 2. So that's 65 plus 64, and here we have 129. So that number is going to be carrying forward. So in Module 3, it'll be 129 plus whatever that portion of the overall grade, and then at the end, it'll be out of 250 points. So what you're looking at is your percent performance on chapters 1 through 8 times 129. And you can see here that students in the course have earned an average of about 116 points out of 129. That's really strong. Middle grade of 120. A modal value, so more than one person has earned that highest grade of 129 points. So we're plus or minus about 13 points, which is pretty small. So you all are performing similar to one another, and you can see the minimum and maximum here. So there's your histogram, and you can see the majority of folks are somewhere between. My son's taking a shower upstairs. I don't know what he's doing. He's making lots of noise. Anyway, so at this highest level of point accrual. So good job. Now what you can see here is the scatter plot that shows the correlation between point accrual in chapters 1 through 8, as well as performance in the discussion forums. So discussion forums are including, again, all of the discussion forums through the end of Module 2. So intro plus Module 1 plus Module 2. So that's a total of 200 points. And like I described last time, there's a bit of a ceiling because most people are doing really well and earning those in-text points. And then also we can see many people are doing well on terms of point accrual in the 3 discussion forums so far. What's worth noting, though, is that the R-squared here, and again, I don't expect you to know this, but the R-squared is a 0.51, which is very strong. That means if you earned more points in the textbook, you are much more likely to earn a greater number of points across these 3 discussion forums. One does not cause the other. That's not what the correlation analysis can tell us, but we know that they have a significant positive relationship. Similarly, we see an even stronger relationship between the number of points that you've accrued in the textbook as well as your performance on the second test. So if you earned more points in the text, you are more likely to have earned more points on the test. And so I invite you to think a little bit about, so last time I talked about these are very different types of assignments, but they meld in together. So maybe you can think about how your experiences working in the textbook are alike or maybe not alike to your experiences completing the discussion forums and the tests. So let's come back up here and look at the discussion forums. So again, this is out of 200 points, 50 for the intro, 75 and 75 for modules 1 and 2 respectively. And you can see that the average accrual is 144 out of 200, and that we have a median or a middle score of 154. Now this is total across 3, so our lower point accrual are going to be reflective of people who didn't complete all of them necessarily. So let's come down here. There are discussion forums. 11 folks out of the 18 active students in the class are earning at the highest levels in those discussion forums. I wanted to mention, I think, always remember to put a final full citation for the text or my slides in your discussion forum. And for those of you that are using other resources, if you put a full final citation to those, that is sufficient. Of course, you should always be including full final citations for any text you use. If you include in text, but miss the full final, then you'll lose a few points because I always want that full final there. Another thing I want to mention is that some of you are missing a good number of points because you're not editing your work. So if you have been using Blackboard for a while and you've noticed that we are working with a newer edition, that's good. I'm glad you've noticed. What this means though is that when you are writing, and this is the same for me, anybody who types into a text box into Blackboard, it does not automatically edit your work anymore. It doesn't give you that red squiggly line underneath a word if it's misspelled, or a blue word, blue line if there's some grammatical issue. You actually have to go, after you type everything in, you actually have to go up and there's a little button that says ABC, and you have to click that and then it will edit for you. So the editing capability is there. You just have to do the extra work of making sure you do that. And I struggle with this all the time, but there are some of you whose editing needed so much work that I really struggled to understand what you were writing about, and that had to have cost you points because you weren't able to communicate to me clearly your knowledge and mastery of the topic. All right, so in terms of the discussion forums, we can also look at their relationship to performance on test 2 and look at this. This is a really strong presentation. So again, there's a strong relationship between these two. The higher your point accrual on the discussion forums, the higher your performance on test 2. And yeah, that should, I mean, even to those of you who are not familiar with correlations or scatter plots, that should be pretty impressive to you. So let's look at test 1 versus test 2. So on test 1, and this is out of the 16 people who took the test this time, looking at their test compared to last time. So if you didn't take the test either last time or this time, your work is not included here. This is what's called a paired samples analysis. So it's literally saying if I took test 1, it compares my work to when I took test 2. If student Q took test 1, it compares it to their performance on test 2. So it's comparing everybody's grade to their performance on test 1. So if you didn't take either one of those, you're not in this analysis. So just keep that in mind. And you can see the performance is pretty similar. So we've got an average of 72 on test 1, 71 on test 2. Our median score is higher on test 2. And you may remember that I talked last time about standard deviation. And we do have a greater spread here. So this is 17 points plus or minus 71 points. And so we've got a minimum score. So we've got a lower minimum score and a higher maximum score that's going to be related to that increased variability in performance on the second test. And so here's that first test. And then here's the second test for the 16 people who took both. And so you can see there's a bit more of a spread, and the tail is on the negative side like it was up here. It's just spread out more. So I told you that this is a paired sample analysis. And so when we look at the correlation between the performance on test 1 and test 2, we again have a strong relationship. If you performed higher on test 1, you tended to perform higher on test 2. No, it's not a causal relationship. But one of the things I want to invite you to think about is that this is really about helping you strengthen your preparedness strategies. So if you didn't perform so well on test 1 and you tended not to perform so well on test 2, what wasn't working for you? Was it time management? Are we talking about content mastery? Are we talking about material preparation? I think that, well, I know that actually oftentimes when students are provided that open book, open note test platform, they tend not to prepare like they would as if the book or as if the tests were closed. And that can be a problem predominantly because we tend to rely too much on our materials to be there to help us when we are unsure. And then we take time that we wouldn't normally trying to look up information as opposed to just using what we feel confident that we already know or feel confident that we don't know, depending on the situation. So this is like I said, a strong direct relationship. And you can see that the correlation here is 0.62, so it's closer to 1 than it is to 0. We can also look at the actual analysis comparing these two. So like I said, now here in terms of the statistics, there were 2 people who didn't take it on test 1, who did take it on test 2. So now we're down to 14 individuals. And so for those 14 individuals, they were performed actually lower on test 1 than test 2. And it's just by taking out the 2 grades that were listed in the descriptive statistics above. And so on test 2, they tended to perform higher if we're only looking at the mean. But you can see the variability is greater for test 2. We talked about that. And if we come down here, this paired samples test, it's also called a correlated groups t-test, shows us that we have a significance that's greater than 0.05. So that means this is not a significant difference. So even though test 2 average is higher than test 1, there's so much variability in these samples that the performance is not significantly better. And we can also note that at some point you all might learn about effect sizes, and a negative 0.21 is not a strong relationship. So finally, we'll get to course performance overall. So this is out of 529 points. That is explained to you in gradebook under module 2 earned points. So you have 200 points from the test, 200 points from the discussion forum, and 129 points from the in-text assignments. And so we're looking at 73% is the average. That is a middle C. The middle grade is actually a C+, so we're a bit higher than the performance on the first go around. And you can see, again, we have credit spread that's 18 points plus or minus 73, where the majority of the class is lying. And you can actually see that here. So if our mean is 73, it's going to be here. And we've got, what, 7 folks lower than that one. And then we also have 8 folks higher than that. So probably what you want to see is this one. So here we can see that in the course right now. Now, again, this doesn't include anything that you've done beyond chapter 8, nothing chapter 9 forward. So we've got 3 A's, 5 B's, 3 C's, and then the rest of the folks are located over here. Last time I asked that anybody who is in these 2 categories to please reach out and talk to me, and nobody in those categories did. So I am hopeful that I'll hear from some folks so we can at least touch base and let me know that you're like watching this and paying attention and taking the most you can out of these reviews and my offered support to you, but it's possible that that isn't happening. So I did want to mention on the test, actually, I forgot on the test, I'll just go ahead and stop sharing. There is a question about learning and performance, and a handful of you included, so the question was, taking one of our tests as an example, why is it that learning doesn't necessarily equal performance? And I have been using a variation on this question for quite some time. And so I'm familiar with students' patterns of answering both sort of like strongly, but then also, where students are a little bit confused. And I noticed that a handful of folks talked about short-term and long-term learning. And that was not part of the question. And it was not part of the material in terms of, do you know something for long enough to like take a test and vomit it out and then not remember it later on if you're tested later or on a second test? That was not the question. And I'm not sure, I mean, I'm fine if you all study together, if you work together. I would just encourage you all to try to stick really close to the exact language that's presented in the content as well as in the test question itself. So I replied to those and said, I'm not sure what you were talking about here. I think that's all I have for you now. So at 529 points out of 1,000 points, you're over halfway to the finish line, less than 2 weeks to go. So, I mean, high five, good job. And I'm excited to continue to see your work. I'm having a good time reading your discussion forums. And as always, I provided some comment to every single person. So even if you got all of your points in your discussion forums, I hope you'll go look, because for some of you, I've given some sort of more detailed feedback. But anyway, all right, I hope you are having a good week or weekend, whatever it is for you. And yeah, please let me know if there's anything I can do to support you. And communication sooner is always better than communication at the end. So, all right, I will catch up with you next time.